Chapter 15. The Herman White Block Memorial Library's air conditioning unit didn't work very good, and there was only one fan. And from the minute me and Winnedex got in the library, he hooked it all. He lay right in front of it and wagged his tail and let it blow his fur all around. Some of his fur was pretty loose and blew right off his like a dandelion puff. I worried about him hooking the fan, and I worried about the fan blowing him bald. But Mr. Franny said not to worry about either thing, that Winnedex could hold the fan if he wanted to, and she had never in her life seen a dog made bald by a fan. Sometimes when Miss Franny was telling a story, she would have a fit. They were small fits and they didn't last long. But what happened was she would forget what she was saying. She would just stop and start to shake like a little leaf. And when that happened, when the ducks would get up from the fan and sit right at Mrs. Franny Block's side, he would sit up tall, protecting her with his ears standing up straight on his head, like a soldier's. And when Miss Franny stopped shaking and started talking again, Benedict would lick her hand and lie back down in front of the fan. Whenever Miss Franny had one over her fist, it reminded me of Benedict in a thunderstorm. There were a lot of thunderstorms that summer. And I got real good at holding on to Benedict's whenever they came. I held on to him and comforted him and whispered to him and rocked him just the same way he tried to comfort Miss Franny when she had her fist. Only I held on to Benedict for another reason too. I held on to him tight so he wouldn't run away. It all made me think about Gloria Dump. I wondered who comforted her when she heard those bottles knocking together. Those ghosts chattering about the things she had done wrong. I wanted to comfort Gloria Dump, and I decided that the best way to do that would be to read her a book, read it to her loud enough to keep the ghost away. And so I asked Miss Franny, I said, Miss Franny, I've got a grown up friend whose eyes are going on her, and I would like to read her a book out loud. Do you have any suggestions? Suggestions? Mr. Franny said, yes, ma'am. I have suggestions, of course. I have suggestions. How about Gone with the Wind? What's that about? I asked her. Why, said Mr. Franny, it's a wonderful story about the Civil War. The Civil War? I said. Do not tell me you have never heard of the Civil War. Miss Franny Block looked like she was going to faint. She waved her hands in front of her face. I know about the Civil War. I told her that was the war between the South and the North over slavery. Slavery, yes, said Miss Franny. It was also about stage, rice, and money. It was a terrible war. My great grandfather fought in that war. He was just a boy. Your great grandfather? Yes, ma'am. Litmus W block. Now there's a story. When he takes a yawned real bit and lay down on his side with a thumb and a sigh. I swear he knew that phrases. Now there's a story. And he knew it means we weren't going anywhere real soon. Go ahead and tell it to me, Mr. Franny, I said, and I sat down cross-legged next to Winnie Dix. I pushed him and tried to get him to share the fan, but he pretended he was asleep and he wouldn't move. I was all settled in and ready for a good story when the door banged and the pincher-faced Amanda Wilkinson came in. Winnie Dixie sat up and stared at her. He tried out a smile on her, but she didn't smile back, and so he lay down again. I'm ready for another book, Amanda said, slamming her book down on Mr. Franny's desk. Well, said Mr. Franny, maybe you wouldn't mind waiting. I am telling India, Paul, a story about my great-grandfather. You are, of course, more than welcome to listen. It will be just 1 minute. Amanda sighed, a real big dramatic sigh, and stared past me. She pretended like she wasn't interested, but she was. I could tell. Come, sit over here, said Mrs. Franny. I'll stand. Thank you, said Amanda. Suit yourself. Miss Franny shrugged. Now, where was I? So, oh yes, litmus, double the blood. Chapter 16. Litmus double block was just a boy when the firing on fourth system occurred. Miss Franny Block said as she started in on her story. Fourth summer, Sumter, I said. It was the firing on Fort Sumter that started the war, said Amanda. Okay, I said, shocked. Well, Litmus was 14 years old. He was strong and big, but he was still just a boy. His daddy, utterly double block, had already enlisted, and Litmus told his mama that he could not stand by and let the South get beat, and so he went to fight too. Miss Franny looked around the library and then she whispered, men and boys always want to fight. They are always looking for a reason to go to war. It is the saddest thing. They have this abiding notion that war is fun, and no history lesson will convince them differently. Anyway, Litmus went and enlisted. He lied about his age. Yes, ma'am, like I said, he was a big boy, and the army took him, and Litmus went off to war. Just like that, left behind his mother and 3 sisters. He went off to be a hero, but he soon found out the truth. Miss Franny closed her eyes and shook her head. What truth? I asked her. Why, that war is hell? Miss Franny said with her eyes still closed. Poor Hill. Hill is a cuss word, said Amanda. I stole a book at her. Her face was pinched up even more than usual. War, said Miss Franny with her eyes still closed. Should be a curse word, too. She shook her head and opened her eyes. She pointed at me, and then she pointed at Amanda. You, neither of you, can imagine. No, ma'am, Amanda and me said at exactly the same time. We looked real quick at each other and then back at Miss Franny. You cannot imagine. Little Miss was hungry all the time, and he was covered with all manner of vermin, fleas, and lice. And in the winter, it was just so cold, he thought for sure he would freeze to death. And in the summer, why, there's nothing worse than wool in summertime. It stinks so. And the only thing that made the little miss forget that he was hungry and itch and hot or cold was that he was getting shot at. And he got shot at quite a bit. And he was nothing more than a child. Did he get killed? I asked Miss Franny. Good grief, said Amanda. She rolled her eyes. Now, Papa, Miss Franny said, I wouldn't be standing in this room telling this story if he was killed. I wouldn't exist. No, ma'am. He had to live, but he was a changed man. Yes, ma'am, a changed man. He walked back home when the war was over. He walked from Virginia all the way back to G- Georgia. He didn't have a horse. Nobody had a horse except for the Yankee. He walked, and when he got home, there was no home there. Where was it? I asked her. I didn't care if a man that thought I was stupid. I wanted to know why. Mrs. Franny shouted so loud that Benedict and Amanda Wilkinson and me all jumped. The Yankees bonded. Yes, ma'am, bonded to the ground. What about his sister? Amanda asked. She moved around the desk and came and sat on the floor. She looked up at Miss Franny. What happened to them? Dead of typhoid fever. Oh no, Amanda said in a real soft voice. And his mamma, I whispered, did too. And his father, Amanda asked, what happened to him? He died on the battlefield. Little Miss was an orphan. I asked, yes, ma'am, said Mr. Franny Block. Little Miss was an orphan. This is a sad story, I told Miss Franny. It sure is, said Amanda. I was amazed that she was agreeing with me about something. I am not done yet. Mr. Franny said when the Dixie started to snore and knocked him with my foot to try to make him quit. I wanted to hear the rest of the story. It was important to me to hear how Litmus survived after losing everything he loved. Chapter 17. Well, Litmus came home from the war, said Miss Franny, as she went on with her story and found himself alone, and he sat down on what used to be the front step of his house, and he cried and cried and cried. He cried just like a baby. He missed his mama, and he missed his daddy, and he missed his sisters, and he missed the boy he used to be. When he finally finished crying, he had the strangest sensation. He felt like he wanted something sweet. He wanted a piece of candy. He hadn't had a piece of candy in years. And it was right then that he made a decision. Yes, man, Litmus W. figured the world was a sorry affair and that it had enough ugly things in it, and what it was going to do was concentrate on putting something sweet in it. He got up and started walking. He walked all the way to Florida, and the whole time he was walking, he was planning. Planning what? I asked. Why planning the candy factory? Did he build it? I asked. Of course he did. It's still standing out on Fairville Road. That old building, said Amanda. That big spooky one. It is not spooky, said Mrs. Franny. It was the birthplace of the family fortune. It was there that my great grandfather manufactured the litmus lozenge, a candy that was famous the world over. I've never heard of it, said Amanda. Me neither, I said. Well, said Mr. Franny, they aren't made anymore. The world, it seems, lost its appetite for litmus lozenges, but I still happen to have a few. She opened the top drawer of her desk. It was full of candy. She opened the drawer below that. It was full of candy too. Miss Franny Block's whole desk was full of candy. Would you care for a little Mr. Lozenge? She asked Amanda and me. Yes, please, said Amanda. Sure, I said. Can Winnie Dixie have one too? I have never known a dog that cared for hard candy, said Miss Franny. But he's welcome to try one. Miss Franny gave Amanda one, little Mr. Rogens, and me too. Me too. I unwrapped one and held it out to Winnie Dix. He sat up and sniffed it and wagged his tail and took the candy from between. My fingers are real gentle. He tried to chew on it, and when that didn't work, he just swallowed the whole thing in one big gulp. Glop. Then he wagged his tail at me and lay back down. I ate my litmus lozenge slow. It tasted good. It tasted like root beer and strawberry and something else I didn't have a name for. Something that made me feel kind of sad. I looked over at Amanda. She was sucking on her candy and thinking hard. Do you like it? Miss Franny asked me. Yes, ma'am, I told her. What about you, Amanda? Do you like the litmus lozenge? Yes, ma'am, she said. But it makes me think of things I feel sad about. I wondered, what in the world, Amanda? Wilkinson had to feel sad about. She wasn't new to town. She had a mama and a daddy. I had seen her with them in church. There's a secret ingredient in there. Miss Franny said, I know it. I told her I can taste it. What is it? Sorrow. Miss Franny said, not everybody can taste it. Children, especially, seem to have a hard time knowing it's there. I taste it, I said. Me too, said Amanda. Well then, Mr. Frank said, you will probably both had your share of sadness. I had to move away from Waterloo and leave all my friends. I said, that is one sadness I have had, and Dunlop and Steve Dewberry are always picking on me. That's another sadness. And the biggest one, my biggest sadness is that my mama left me when I was still small, and I can hardly remember her. I keep hoping I'll get to meet her and tell her some stories. It makes me miss Carson, said Amanda. She sounded like she was going to cry. I have to go. And she got up and almost ran out of the Herman W. Block Memorial Library. Who's your Carson? I asked Miss Franny. She shook her head. Sarah, she said. It was a sorrow-filled world. But how do you put that in a piece of candy? I asked her. How do you get that taste in there? That's the secret, she said. That's why Litmus made a fortune. He manufactured a piece of candy that tasted sweet and sad at the same time. Can I have a piece to take to my friend Gloria? Dump and another one to take to Otis down at Gertrude Pet's, and one for the preacher, and one for Sweetie Pie too. You may have as many as you want, said Miss Franny. So I stuffed my pockets full of litmus lozenges, and I thanked Miss Franny for her story, and I checked out Gone with the Wind, which was a very big book, and I told Benedict to get up, and the two of us left and went over to Gloria Dunn's. I rode right past the Dewberry's house. Dunlop and Steve were playing football in the front yard, and I was just getting ready to stick my tongue out at them. But then I thought about what Miss Franny said about war being hell, and I thought about what Gloria Dunn said about not judging them too hard, and so I just to wave it instead. They stood and stared at me, but when I was almost all the way past the house, Dunlop pulled his hand up in the air and waved back. Hey, he hollered. Hey, Opal! I waved harder, and I thought about Amanda Wilkinson and how it was neat that she liked a good story the same as I did, and I wondered again who would get us on. Chapter 18. When we got to Gloria items. I told her I had two surprises for her and asked her which one did she want first, the small one or the big one. The small one, said Gloria. I handed her the litmus lozenge and she moved it around in her hands, feeling it. Candy? She said. Yes, ma'am, I told her. It's called the litmus lozenge. Oh, Lord, yes, I remember these candies. My dad used to eat them. She unwrapped the litmus lozenges and put it in her mouth and nodded her head. Do you like it? I asked her. Mm-hmm. She nodded her head slowly. It tastes sweet, but it also tastes like people living. You mean sad? I asked her. Does it taste like sorrow to you? That's right, she said. It tastes sorrowful but sweet. Now, what's surprise number two? A book. I said, a book? Uh-huh. I said, I'm going to read it out loud to you. It's called Gone with the Wind. Mr. Franny says it's a great book. It's about the Civil War. Do you know all about the Civil War? I have heard it mentioned a time or two, said Gloria, nodding her head and sucking on her litmus lozenge. It's going to take us a long time to read this book, I told her. There are 1,037 pages. Woohoo, said Gloria. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her hands on her stomach. We best get started then. And so I read the first chapter of Gone with the Wind out loud to Gloria then. I read it loud enough to keep her ghost away, and Gloria listened to it good. And when I was done, she said it was the best prize she had ever had, and she couldn't wait to hear chapter 2. That night, I gave the preacher this litmus lozenge right before he kissed me good night. What's this? He said. It's some candy that Mr. Franny's great-grandfather invented. It's called litmus lozenge. The preacher unwrapped it and put it in his mouth, and after a minute, he started rubbing his nose and nodding his head. Do you like it? I asked him. It has a particular flavor. Root beer? I said something else. Strawberry? That's too, but there's just still something else. It's odd. I could see the preacher getting farther and farther away. He was hunching up his shoulders and lowering his chin and getting ready to pull his head inside his hair. It almost tastes a little melancholy, he said. Melancholy? What's that? said the preacher. He rubbed his nose some more. It makes me think of your mother. Winniedex sniffed at the candy wrapper in the preacher's hand. It tastes sad, he said, and sighed. It must be bad batch. No, I told him. I sat up in bed. That's the way it's supposed to taste. Litmus came back from the war, and his whole family was dead. His daddy died fighting, and his mama and his sisters died from a disease, and the Yankees burned his house down, and Litmus was sad, very sad, and what he wanted more than anything in the whole world was something sweet. So he built a candy factory and made a litmus lozenge, and he put all the sad he was filling into the candy. My genius, said the preacher. Benedict snuffled the candy wrapper out of the preacher's hand and started chewing on it. Give me that, I said to Benedict, but he wouldn't give it up. I had to reach inside his mouth and pull it out. You can't eat candy wrappers, I told him. The preacher cleared his throat. I thought he was going to say something important, maybe tell me another thing that he remembered about my mama. But what he said was, oh, Paul, I had a talk with Mrs. Dewberry, Dewberry the other day. She said that Steve says that you called him a bald-headed baby. It's true, I said I did, but he called Gloria dumb witch all the time, and he called Otis retarded, and once he even said that his mama said I shouldn't spend all my time with old ladies. That's what he said. I think you should apologize, said the preacher. Me? I said. Yes, he said. You, you tell Steve your story. If you said anything that hurt his feelings, I'm sure he just wanted to be your friend. I don't think so. I told him, I don't think he wants to be my friend. Some people have a strange way of going about making friends. He said, you apologize. Yes, sir, I said. I remembered the Carson. Daddy, I said, do you know anything about Amanda Wilkinson? What kind of thing? Do you know something about her and somebody named Carson? Carson was her brother. He drowned last year. He's dead? Yes, said the preacher. His family is still suffering a great deal. How old was he? 5, said the preacher. He was only 5 years old, Daddy, I said. How could you not tell me about something like that? Other people's tragedies should not be the subject of idle conversation. There was no reason for me to tell you. It's just that I needed to know, I said, because it helps to explain Amanda. No wonder she's just so pinch-faced. What's that? Said the preacher. Nothing, I said. Good night, India, Paul, the preacher said. He leaned over and kissed me and smelled the root beer and the strawberry and sadness all mixed together on his breath. He patted Benedict on the head and got up and turned off the light and closed the door. I didn't go to sleep right away. I lay there and thought how life was like a litmus lozenge, how the sweet and the sad were all mixed up together, and how hard it was to separate them out. It was confusing. Daddy! I shouted. After a minute, he opened the door and raised his eyebrow at me. What was it that word you said? The word that means said, melancholy, he said. Melancholy, I repeated. I liked the word it sounded. like there was a music hidden somewhere inside it. Good night now, the preacher said. Good night, I told him back. I got up out of the bed, over bed, and unwrapped the litmus lozenge and stuck on it hard and thought about my mama leaving me. There was a melancholy feeling, and then I thought about Amanda and Carson, and that made me feel melancholy too. Poor Amanda and poor Carson. He was the same age as a sweetie pie, but he would never get to have his sixth birthday party. Chapter 19. In the morning, me and Winniedex went down to sweep the pasture, and I took a litmus lozenge for Otis. Is it Halloween? Otis asked when I handed him the candy. No, I said. Why? Well, you are giving me a candy. It's just a gift, I told him, for today. Oh, said Otis. He unwrapped the litmus lozenge and put it in his mouth, and after a minute, tears started rolling down his face. Thank you, he said. Do you like it? I asked him. He nodded his head. It tastes good, but it also tastes a little bit like being in jail. God Gertrude squeaked. She picked up the litmus lozenge wrapper in her beak and then dripped it and looked around. Gertrude, she screamed again. You can't have any, I told her. It's enough for birds. Then, real quick, before I lost my nerve, I said, Otis, what were you in jail for? Are you a murder? No, ma'am, he said. Are you a burglar? No, ma'am, Otis said again. He stuck on his candy and stared down and he pointed to the bush. You don't have to tell me, I said. I was just wondering. I ain't a dangerous man, Otis said. If that's what you were thinking, I'm lonely, but I ain't dangerous. Okay, I said, and I went into the back room to get my broom. When I came back out, Otis was just standing where I left him, still staring down at his feet. It was on account of the music, he said. What was it? I asked. Why I went to the jail? It was on account of the music. What happened? I wouldn't stop playing my guitar. Used to be, I played it on the street, and sometimes the people would give me money. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because the music is better if someone is listening to it. Anyway, the police came and they told me to stop it. They said how I was breaking the law, and the whole time they were talking to me, I went right on playing my music, and that made them mad. They tried to put handcuffs on me. He sighed. I didn't like that. I wouldn't have been able to play my guitar with them things on. And then what happened? I asked him. I hit them. He whispered. You hit the police? Yeah, one of them. I knocked him out. Then I went to jail. And they locked me up and wouldn't let me have any guitar. And when they finally let me out, they made me promise I wouldn't never play my guitar on the street again. He looked up at me real quick and then back down at his boots. And don't. I only play it in here for the animals. Gertrude, the human Gertrude, she owns this shop, and she gave me this job when she read about me in the paper, and she said it's all right for me to play music for the animals. You play your music for me and Benedict and Sweetie Pie, I said. Yeah, he agreed. But you ain't on the street. Thank you for telling me about it, Otis. I said, it's alright. He said, I don't mind. Sweetie Pie came in and I gave her litmus lozenge and she spat it right out. She said that it tasted bad. She said that it tasted like not having a dog. I swept the floor real slow that day. I wanted to keep Otis company. I didn't want him to be lonely. Sometimes it seemed like everybody in the world was lonely. I thought about my mama. Thinking about her was the same as the hole you keep on filling with your tongue after you lose a tooth. Time after time, my mind kept going to that empty spot, the spot where I felt like she should be. Chapter 20. When I told Gloria Dam about Otis and how he got arrested, she laughed so hard she had to grab hold of her first teeth so they wouldn't fall out of her mouth. Ooh, she said when she was finally done laughing. There's sure just some dangerous criminal. He's a lonely man, I told her. He just wanted to play his music for somebody. Gloria wiped her eyes with the hem of her dress. I know, yes, sugar, she said. But sometimes things are so sad they get to be funny. You know what else? I said, still thinking about sad things. That girl I told you about, the picture-faced one, Amanda. Well, her brother drowned last year. He was only 5 years old, the same age as Sweetie Pie Thomas. Gloria stopped smiling. She nodded her head. I remember hearing about that. She said, I remember hearing about a little drowned boy. That's why Amanda is so picture-faced, I said. She missed her brother. Most likely, Gloria agreed. Do you think everybody missed somebody? Like I miss my mama? Mm-hmm, said Gloria. She closed her eyes. I believe sometimes that the whole world has an aching heart. I couldn't stand to think about silly things that couldn't be helped anymore. So I said, do you want to hear some more Gone with the Wind? Yes, indeed, Gloria said. I've been looking forward to it all day. Let's see what Mrs. Scarlett is up to now. I opened up Gone with the Wind and started to read. But the whole time I was thinking about Otis, worrying about him not being allowed to play his guitar for people. In the book, Scarlett was looking forward to going to big barbecue where there was going to be music and food. That's how I got the idea. That's what we needed to do, I said. I slammed the book shut. When the taxis had shut up from underneath Gloria's chair, he looked around all nervous like. Huh? Said Gloria Dunn. Have a party? I told her. We needed to have a party and invite Mrs. Franny Block and the preacher and Otis can play his guitar for everybody. Sweetie Pie can come too. She listens to his music good. He's who? Gloria asked. We, me and you. You could make some food and have a party right here in your yard. Said Gloria. We could make peanut butter sandwiches and cut them up in triangles to make them look fancy. Lord, said Gloria. I don't know if the whole world likes peanut butter as much as you and me and this dog. Okay, then, I said, we could make egg salad sandwiches. Others like those. You know how to make egg salad? No, ma'am, I said. I don't have a mama around teach me things like that. But I bet you know. I bet you could teach me. Please. Maybe said Gloria. She put her hand on Benedict's head. She smiled at me. I knew she was telling me yes. Thank you, I said. I went over and hugged her. I squeezed her hard. Benedict wagged his tail and tried to get in between the two of us. He couldn't stand being left out of anything. It's going to be the best party ever, I told Gloria. You got to make me one promise, though. Gloria said, all right, I told her. You got to invite them, Dewberry Boys, Dunlap and Steve. Ain't gonna be no party unless you invited them. I have to. Yes, said Gloria. You promised me. I promised, I said. I didn't like the idea, but I promised. I started inviting people right away. I asked the preacher first. Daddy, I said. Oh, Paul? The preacher said back. Daddy, me and Benedict and Gloria are having a party. Well, said the preacher, that's nice. You have a good time. Daddy, I said, I'm telling you because you are invited. Oh, said the preacher. He rubbed his nose. I see. Can you come? I asked him. He sighed. Others ain't not. Why not? Others why not? He said. Mrs. Franny Bullock took to the idea right away. A party, she said, and clapped her hands together. Yes, ma'am, I told her. It will be kind of like barbecue at 12 Oaks in Gone with the Wind. Only it's not going to be as many people, and we are going to serve egg salad sandwiches instead of barbecue. That sounds lovely, Mr. Franny said. And then she pointed at the back of the library and whispered, maybe you should ask Amanda too. She probably ought to want to come, I said. She doesn't like me very much. Ask her and see what she says, Mr. Franny whispered. So I walked to the back of the library and I asked Amanda Wilkinson, Wilkinson, in my best manners voice, to please come to my party. She looked around all nervous and stiff. A party, she said. Yes, sir, I said. I sure would like it if you could come. She stared at me with her mouth open. Okay, she said after a minute. I mean, yes, thank you. I would love to. And just like I promised Gloria, I asked the Two better boys. I ain't going to no party at a witch's house, Steve said. Dunlop knocked Steve with his elbow. We will come, he said. We will not, said Steve. That witch might cook us up in her big old witch's pot. I don't care if you come or not, I told them. I'm just asking because I promised I would. We'll be there, said Donald. And he nodded at me and smiled. Sweetie Pie was very excited when I invited her. What's the theme? She asked. Well, there isn't one, I said. You gotta think of a theme. She told me. She stuck her nickel in her mouth and then pulled it back out. It ain't a party without a theme. Isn't this a dog coming? She asked. She wrapped her arms around Benedict's and squeezed him so hard that his eyes almost popped out over his head. Yes, sir, I told her. Good, she said. You could make that the theme. It could be a dog party. I'll think about it, I told her. The last person I asked was Otis. I told him all about the party and that he was invited and he said, no thank you. Why not? I asked him. I don't like parties, said Otis. Please, I begged. It won't be a party unless you come. I'll give you a whole free week of sweeping and arranging and dusting. If you come to the party, that's what I'll do. A whole week for free? Otis said, looking up at me. Yes, sir, I told him. But I don't have to talk to people, right? No, sir, I said. You don't. But bring your guitar. Maybe you could play us some music. Maybe, said Otis. He looked down at his boots again real quick, trying to hide his smile. Thank you, I told him. Thank you for deciding to come. Chapter 21.